Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and our leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Before we start the show, I want to mention that we have a heart-based leadership bootcamp that we are offering. You can check it out at customerfanatics.com/boot-camp. That's customerfanatics.com/boot-camp. Today, I am so excited to be speaking with Dirk Frese. He is the founder of an organization called Wisdom and the director of marketing for an organization called Julabo. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Leadership with Heart podcast. This is your host, Heather Younger. I am very excited today to have Dirk Frese on the phone. He was referred to me by a very close friend of mine, Jennifer McGinley, and she thought that he'd be a great guest on the show because she felt like he had a great warmth about him as a leader, and he focused so much on lifting up women in the world and helping them to become better leaders as well. And so I just really couldn't refuse to have him on the show. So welcome, Dirk.
Thank you very much, Heather. I highly appreciate that.
So tell our listeners where you are right now in your leadership journey.
I'm currently working for a company in temperature control. The name is Julabo. I'm here as a director of marketing and sales and service. So if you ask me about the leadership role, how did I start? I started my journey into management coming from science because I'm a scientist. My background is being a biochemist in the pharmaceutical industry. So I started out as a sales person. And then immediately I went into sales training. And that, of course, leads into leadership position because there you train people not only to sell, but also to lead their customers, but also to lead regarding their colleagues. So I was confronted pretty early in my career with questions about leadership and how to convey that. From then on, just teaching about biochemical pathways, as it's called in the pharmaceutical industry, of the products and the drugs, how they act. In fact, it became more apparent to me that it's more important to have a good communication style, and that is definitely very closely linked to leadership. So I learned a lot there. I developed own programs, in fact, about communication training, so about verbal, but as well as non-verbal communication. And that really catapulted me forward into leadership roles myself.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. To take the track from science, I think, is the interesting part. I mean, some of the stuff you talk about with the pathways and all that, it's like, I've heard of that before, but I have no clue what that's about. But to be able to have that, side of your brain working and at the same time have that strong understanding that communication drives everything forward. You can't get inside of the lab, inside of pharmaceutical labs, any of that stuff. You can't accomplish anything if you can't communicate well, right?
Absolutely. And that's key throughout my whole career. And that's obviously something that nobody is telling you in academia. So we come later to that part of my current business or activities again, because you don't hear about that. You have no clue what your profile later in the professional world, in the industry, in corporate world looks like. So that was interesting to develop that. And so then I went on from the pharmaceutical industry into the laboratory industry world. And again, communication became key so far that I even was then invited to train the board of the management in communication skills. So I've seen that there's a need everywhere, from the warehouse up to the CEO. And that was for me really exciting. And so I went to a very large laboratory company in the end, which was globally responsible as a leader in this area. And I also took a global responsibility, which made it even more interesting for me to think about communication, because from one day to the other, I led a global team then with staff members on every continent. And that was interesting because communication skills are to a certain degree objective, on the other hand, very much biased by cultural influences. So I then was very much exposed to cross-cultural management and got an interest in that area as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, I would have to say that Jennifer was right to refer you, because this is an area that I don't think we've quite touched on yet on this podcast, and that is the cultural dynamics that exist in the leadership space. So for you, managing the global team on many different continents, you are having to learn to change and tweak your communication style and how you deliver your expectations or communicate those expectations to the people that are reporting to you. And you have to be super emotionally intelligent to, when they're not in your office, not in the country, not on the continent, to be able to communicate with them and to be able to really drive results. And also for them to know that, they're important to the team, that they are doing meaningful work, that it ties back to the mission and the vision. And again, to be able to do that globally is quite amazing. So it's interesting that you've used communication as your tool for that.
Absolutely, and that was very challenging. So it's not always very smooth, of course. Sometimes you are facing situations that you don't even understand. And even if you read beforehand when you went to the country, how they might negotiate, for example, and I might perhaps bring up here a specific example of China, which is really very different from the culture that I grew up in. So I was born in Germany, in Berlin, and so was never before exposed to that, and then really had to realize that people over there have 5,000 years more experience in negotiating than we do. And so I had really to refocus my attention and had to throw my prejudices, which I had, overboard. And it was extremely challenging, and therefore I studied this more in detail. And in the end, and that was in my last position that I'm responsible here in the US, I even trained a sales team of 70 people in China, having learned myself how difficult it can be sometimes to adapt to their style and even then train them. And that was for me a highlight of my career, I can tell you. That was amazing. Because I speak no Chinese, of course I need then an interpreter, which makes it even more difficult in communication. But nonverbal clues are the same, most times at least. And therefore, I was focusing on. That was really one of my most exciting days in my career. I can really share that with you.
Well, this is kind of an intriguing conversation, Dirk, because when I think about when you say the nonverbal cues don't change as much, it's one of those foundational things. Someone asked me the other day on a webinar I was a guest on, and they said, what's one of the main things that you think organizations need to do in order to keep your employees engaged and loyal? And I said, first and foremost, you have to care. And how do you care? You listen, right? And listening doesn't mean that you have to use words. You can use words, you can ask questions, but listening does mean, looking at the person, giving them your attention. Sometimes looking somebody straight in the eye is culturally not the right thing to do. So understanding what the culture entails, but that would show that you respect them and that you care for them if you can understand what it is you need to do to make sure that they know you're listening to them in their language, in their cultural, background, right? Because otherwise we assume, I assume that if I'm engaged with you and I'm listening to you so that I want you to feel important, I'm going to be kind of looking at you, right? And I may be engaging with you in your eyes. And in some places that could be not looked at in a positive way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then you have, and now I come to your book, by the way, then you, and the podcast title, then you have to listen with your heart. And then we come to my leadership style, which is really so closely linked with what you are talking about. And also in your book about the 7 intuitive laws of employee loyalty, because there on page 5, you write something about you have to connect and correct with love. And this is really the reason why I'm so excited to be on this podcast, because for me, love is the main topic, not only in private life, but in business life. So for me, the most important thing in life is love. It's even on the website of Julabo USA, where I'm currently working, under my profile picture, because I think this really drives us. It drives private lives and matters, of course, but all the other interactions in life we have. And if you love your staff, if you love your boss, if you love your customer and your product, then you can be successful. And this is really my mantra. And I think here we connect both of us because, as you just said, sometimes you cannot look each other into the eyes, but if you listen to the heart of the other person, then you can connect. And when you connect, you can empower your staff or you can empower your customer and motivate him or her, and then you get the sale. And this is how I really got my career really growing.
Wow, I love that. Some of the stuff, actually, a lot of what you just said gave me chills. Anybody listening knows how I am. I'm a little bit, I guess, soft in this space. I love that. Love is the
and that's the honest truth. It really is. And I tell that everybody. And as I said, check out the julabo.us website. There it's written, love is the most important thing. And that drives also how I lead my staff. And that comes back, of course. And there you see a lot of motivation with the people coming back, and they work more than 100%, a lot more than that, because they are feeling so taken serious and taken care of. And the same holds true how we should treat our customers. And then, of course, the success is inevitable. That's what I honestly believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I always tell people that it's like they say, well, what do you think about, employee experience, and is there a difference with customer experience? And I'm like, absolutely not. I mean, we're different. There's different targets. One of them is, buying from us, but the other one allows the customer to buy from us because they drive the bus that actually produces the product or services that allows the customer to buy from us. So in the end, I have to give the same deference, the same love, as you like to say it, the same care to both audiences. And most folks, organizations, they don't realize that. They focus all their time on the customer and fail to focus a lot of their time on the employee. So, I think this is really great stuff. And so I love that. So love is what really, kind of defines your main leadership style. So is there, I'm kind of curious, people who have this as a fundamental belief, it's usually driven by like a story. Is there one story that drives your actual leadership style, some event in your life that drives that style, that focus on kind of loving your customers, loving your people?
I would say two things. So the one is not an event. The one thing is how I was raised, honestly. And it's not about religion, because I think love is in every religion. It has nothing to do with that. Some listeners in the audience might think, no, not at all. But I was raised by parents who really put love really at the forefront, and specifically my father, who was a physician. And he taught my brother and me that this is really the most important thing. And we really, in the beginning, of course, didn't understand it, but now we definitely do. And then if you talk about events in my career where this became really clear, I had worked for a large pharmaceutical company, and there was once called by the president all hands on deck meeting because there was a merger happening, and everybody was informed about what's going on. And this person really gave this speech of what's going to happen and where we will merge and relocate. And he said very, very clear, quote unquote, that everybody who is approaching or already above the age of 40, isn't needed in this company anymore, which is a global leader. And I got chills, really. I was not 40 at the time. I thought, oh my God, that really is the opposite of love that you can show. And that was in these times when people still thought the younger, the better, the best performers are young people, which I think today there's a kind of change in the culture about that. We also consider experience to be important. But this experience, I came home, I can tell you, I couldn't believe that when I told this story to my wife. I said, this is a company I cannot work for anymore. And that was also a reason why I left, and then changed my style really accordingly to openly discuss that with my staff as well as with customers, that it's so important to take them serious, to be transparent and honest, and not behave like that. That was for me a negative event, which really in the end turned out positive for all the other employees I had afterwards.
Oh, interesting. Wow. What kind of couth did that guy have standing up and saying that? Oh man, that's just...
Yes, I was shocked. And that really led then for me moving on. And as I said, I worked in the meantime for a global lab company. And why am I here right now? Director Sales and Marketing and Service for Julabo in the US. It was always my dream to once work and live in the US. And being born in a city, Berlin, which was divided by a wall, and I was raised in the American sector. This was already, when I was a little child, that was always my dream. So Julabo gave me this opportunity, and I'm now in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I really highly enjoy that. And that's the reason I came here. And this leads us to the next topic, the nonprofit organization you were talking about, that I do something for women to advance them in their career. And this came about when I arrived here in the US. About after 1 year, I realized that women in the area that we serve in the scientific community mainly are underrepresented a lot. And I haven't seen this in other countries as strict and as harsh as here. And that was in 2016. So I spoke to a customer of ours, a professor at Penn State University, and I asked her about, did you face any obstacles, and why are not more in faculty members females? And we were talking about that, and I said together with her, we should do something about it. And by the way, my wife is also a scientist, and I have a daughter, as you know. So this is very close to my heart to really help people overcome their issues. And so we started a nonprofit organization called Wisdom, and Wisdom stands for Women in Science Demonstrating Outstanding Merits, to advance women in their scientific career and to overcome these obstacles by offering mentorship opportunities, internships, and a social platform. And this was taken on so passionately by the women we talk to also today, because we are the only industry-backed organization like that. Because there are a lot of women in science organizations which are great. They all sprout up from academia, but there is a gap between academia and the corporate world or the industrial world, and that's something we want to bridge. And I'm totally excited about that. And by the way, Julabo is the founding sponsor of that. So as a side effect of that, our employees here at Julabo USA are totally motivated that this company they're working for does more than just selling, that they also take a social responsibility. And this is so rewarding that every morning I have so much fun coming into work. I cannot really tell you how great this feeling is.
It's interesting. There's a couple of things that you said. I'm going to go back to one part of your story where you talked about the man who stood up and said everybody who's over 40 is not needed in this company anymore. You know, in the U.S., that stuff's not allowed. Like in the U.S., you say that.
I know.
There's like so many lawsuits, the company's out of business, you know?
I know. That was in Europe. Yeah,
yeah, I know. I mean, so we just talked about culture, right? And that kind of culturally and legally, we can't do that here.
I know.
So it's kind of interesting. I just, you know, it makes me, my jaw was like super wide open when you said that, told me that story.
I can imagine.
But I love this idea of more companies, not just big, large companies, need to be thinking about more of the socially responsible aspects of, you're an organization, you're profitable. How are you helping the community that surrounds you? How are you growing people that are around you? How are you benefiting or allowing your employees to be a part of these things so they can know that what they do is meaningful, and that what they're doing every day tactically, where they get home and they're tired, they know they're doing meaningful work, and then that builds up to a greater mission. And when they're backing up your organization that's focused on women in tech and science and all like that kind of thing. I think it's like you can get out of bed and know that it's not just like going to, type this accounting record or whatever it is, right? But you're typing your accounting record because in the end, a portion of that is going to be going towards a greater good. And I do think that social responsibility is huge. And by the way, when we look at millennials, this is a very big thing. They want to know that the organization is extended outside of themselves, doing things in the community, and that they have a hand in that. They want to know they have a huge footprint in the world for the work that they do. So I think that your organization, Julabo, has a great view of this already and is taking great action.
Yes, thank you very much, Heather. That's definitely a huge aspect of it. And industry, on the other hand, has a lot of need for talent right now. So they are jumping on this vehicle Wisdom for the women in science and say, okay, women are only part of the talent that we are recruiting, but we are more and more interested in them, whether it's computational sciences or other areas where they found out, that's what I learned in the meantime, that they are more talented than sometimes their male partners or counterparts. So they see this as a tool to recruit people to get talent on board, because there's currently a shortage in the US and a lot of these high-tech companies that we can help with on the one hand. So there's a reason for them to fund us. And on the other hand, we, by the way, then help the women, which was our initial cause, to advance in their careers. So really, everybody is then a winner in the end.
Oh, I love it. You know what? Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Someone's got to do it, right? You know, instead of all of us passing the buck, you know, leaders we don't do that. Leaders don't pass the buck. Leaders say that the buck stops here. There's a problem that exists, and I'm here to solve it. And if something doesn't go well, I have to take responsibility for what that turns out to be. I can't go pointing fingers at the people that I hired, you know, to come on. Now, does that mean that I don't hold people accountable if, you know, we don't go down the road I intended or something? Of course, we need to hold people accountable, but with love, as we just talked about, with love, right?
Yes.
That's key.
Yes.
So share with our listeners a time where maybe you just, you know, you weren't that best leader, where you weren't the best version of yourself, where you kind of go, boy, you know, either you have a regret about it, or again, you learned from it and you just moved forward and said, you know, I wasn't my best there. And so when you weren't there, what did you do to come out of that as well?
So when I probably was not the best leader, of course, nobody is perfect, and I don't even want to give that impression. I just enjoy being a leader and progress. But there are times when things do not go as you intend them, and sometimes you have to terminate people. Let me talk about that first of all. That's very important as a manager, and I think again here love plays an important part of it. So I once had to turn around the company, had to terminate people, unfortunately, because the former management reacted too late. So you can even do that with respect to the people that you have to terminate and show them love by being compassionate and even help them with outplacement. That's what I did. So that went well. But the negative aspect sometimes of being very compassionate is I once knew I had to replace 2 toxic people in an organization and didn't do it because the owners of that company I worked for didn't want that to happen. They said, we know them for so long, for 15 years right now, we don't want that to happen. But knowing that you have toxic elements in your team, really, I realized that due to my experience, that is something you really have to get rid of, unfortunately. And I didn't do it. And in the end, it didn't work out for none of us, neither for the company nor for the people that I did not let go, not for myself, because the success then wasn't there. And I moved on to another company in the end. So being too soft sometimes, knowing better, that was what I learned out of it, isn't good. So sometimes, even if we talk about love here, you have to take tough decisions and to follow through with them. And that's what I learned out of it.
Well, I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, again, you're right. There's nobody that's a perfect leader, period. Like I teach on this stuff. I have podcasts on this stuff. I write about this stuff, right? And I can guarantee you there's at least 20% of the time I'm not doing so well in this area. And it's just one of those things. I think for me, I'm striving all the time to be better in this area, but it doesn't mean I'm perfect. The other thing is, it's interesting when you talk about that counterbalance of, you know, being the leader in the organization, being aware of the toxicity that might exist in the organization, trying to take a stance, you know, wanting to basically clear out the fray that's making the culture go bad, and just feeling the world's against you and that it doesn't happen. In the end, you see how it affected everything. Like you said, it didn't bode well for the organization, for you, for the people, for anybody. I think that's unfortunate when we see, you know, I see it in employee focus groups. I read it in employee survey, you know, verbatim comments a lot, that a lot of times employees feel like there's unfair treatment, like certain people are favorites, right? The favorites mentality.
Yes.
And so in that case, they want more accountability for those people who are not producing at the level they are. And it is up to the leaders to hold other people accountable. And that is a leader with heart. I mean, a leader with heart is also saying, listen, I built a relationship with you. You are not living up to the standard I know you're capable of. And you're definitely not living up to the standard that our organization expects from everybody, not just you, from everybody, from the top down and sideways. And I know you can do more. I know you can do better. I've seen it. That's a leader with heart, because I'm saying it still out of love. I'm still saying it because I care for the person. And there's just a way to do it. And what I always tell people, and tell me if you agree with this, if you've built up that relationship, that relationship of trust, if you have shown the love that we talk about foundationally to the people up front, when you get to the point where you have to go there and say, this is not great, they aren't like just completely freaked out or like super angry. They're probably more disappointed in themselves.
Yes, and they hardly ever freak out, honestly, because as you take them serious all the time beforehand already, they know that this really is a serious discussion which is not driven by anger. It is really driven by compassion, and sometimes they also understand that you have to part ways in their own interest, honestly, because it's sometimes like with your own kids, you have to let them go sometimes when they're mature enough to let them leave home, and that's something, the same thing you face with your employees. If they have perhaps reached a certain aptitude in the task that they're assigned to and the position that you have available, and then you have to say, okay, now it's time for you to move on. It's not even a bad intent, and they are very grateful, and sometimes I get postcards years later from them that they were so thankful for having been let go, as crazy as it sounds, but you can do that when you show that you are authentic and loving.
It's interesting you say that. One of the positions that I worked for several years ago, I guess, there was a big layoff, and I was one of the people. There were like over 200 of us laid off, but I was in the first round of that. And I can't remember how many people were in the first round, 40, 50, so I don't even know. And I remember it was a big ouch because I was the breadwinner of a family of 6, but at the same time, it was a good thing because I realized through kind of the last several months being there of what my passion was supposed to be, which is where I'm at right now today and where I'm evolving into, right? And so I had to kind of go through that. So in the end, funny enough, the person who put together the layoff, like the human resource person who had to actually execute on the layoff, make sure everybody was getting their severance package and everything, she ended up being a testimony on the back of my book. She and I ended up being very good friends. And most people would be like, great. How could you do that? It's almost like, how could you be a friend with it's like your enemy in a way, right? They laid you up. I never saw it that way. I saw it as, you know what? They gave me a gift. They gave me the ability to be the person I am today by them making the decisions that they made. And it wasn't maybe the best thing right then for everybody, but in the end, it ended up being the best thing for me. So I get it 100%.
That's a perfect story, Heather, really underlining what I just said. It's great that you share that because it definitely shows we're on the same page here. Absolutely. I can only underline that.
So what do so when you get to the point, because again, you've managed many different teams, you had global teams on different continents before. I know that your team might be a little smaller now, I'm not sure, but what do you do when you feel like everybody's kind of going in different directions and you're feeling a little disconnected from them and they're disconnected from you? What do you do to reconnect with them on a deeper level?
So first of all, coming back again to Wisdom, the nonprofit, as I said, that motivates a lot of people. They see that we do something here which really is for a greater cause. So that connects, first of all. And secondly, if you lose connection, of course, I always tend to have one-on-one meetings. It's sometimes difficult due to the geography. We don't always have meetings where everybody comes together at the same place. So you try then to have more one-on-one phone calls or video cons. Or if you have the opportunity to meet, then I really take time with these individuals. Recently, I took one on a beach walk at a sales meeting just very early in the morning to talk about other topics, even of personal life, to coach this person through certain issues. And that, of course, helps definitely to reconnect, because then you also show as a leader that you take care of the person as a whole and not just of the sales aspect of this person.
Oh, I love that. So you gave me chills again. Look, that's 2 times on one call.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I love that idea.
Talking teams, I also have to highlight another challenge, which I myself face all the time, by the way. And I only want to give this as a warning to everybody. So everybody needs teams working for him or her, and being part of the team, or sometimes taking decisions, not in a team, but making sure that the team follows through with them. When I recruit teams, like I think most people, we tend to recruit somehow the same kind of characters or personalities that we are ourselves. So I'm very competitive, I'm very success driven, and very impatient. So I like people like that. The risk is that then your team consists only of the same people. So I always have to tell myself that you have to look for diversity. You have to have a team consisting of various characters which play along very well, and in the end show harmony and drive a a mutual success. But this is a challenge I honestly admit also still for me, because I like these people who are like me, and I think most people have the same problem, and we have to be very careful as managers not to fall into this trap.
Yeah, I would have to say you're right, and many folks, I don't see who doesn't fall prey to this particular thing. I try hard to do that same. So for me, I think about this. I have over time really seen deep respect. I grow in deep respect for people who are not like me. Here's what I mean by this. They're not necessarily directly on my team. So when I'm talking about your recruiting, I probably have the same issue you have. But when I think about in an organization working cross-functionally across the table, I tend to have the respect most for those who are the opposite of me. They're the ones who are the data-driven, the people who can put together spreadsheets like no other, can do pivot tables, can, just think super analytical and very detailed. And so I develop a great relationship with them because I have a huge amount of respect for what they do, because I can't do it. I just can't do it. So then, right. And then so then I go, wow. And I really find myself attracted, not in a weird way, right? But attracted meaning just like, wow, I really care for you. I care for you. You and I are like weird. And so they know that. They know that I care for them. They know I'll do whatever they need for me to do, to help advance them, that I show appreciation in big ways to those people, because they may be people who are the behind the scenes people. They don't usually get all the praise. And so I try to put a lot of time into making sure that I praise them for the work that they've done for the organization and for me specifically. And it makes them feel good, right? And then I have a reputation for doing that. But you're right. When we think about recruiting people, I do think of I want to make sure I get people who I think are more emotionally intelligent, those who I feel like lead with heart, or even people are heart-based. Yeah. I had that same thing. But you're right. When the rubber hits the road, if everybody was like me, we'd be in serious trouble. So we have to sometimes have those people that their emotional intelligence may not be that high. They may be more IQ oriented. We need that. We need the folks who can kind of look at a problem and start to dissect it in their minds from that analytical framework. And it may not be, they can be the person who's so warm.
Yes. Okay. I'm totally with you.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that. I think, like I said, I think everybody does struggle with that. But here's the thing I always say is that it's not about perfection in this space. It's about continuous improvement. We're looking at ways, how can we, be our best selves? How can we drive to be better every day? How can we lead well, right? And for our people in the end to know that no matter what, if we can't get to them, if we for some reason can't have our one-on-ones, whatever it is, that in the end, when we're making decisions, we're out in the world, we still have them as our focus, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's kind of the focus here. So I think all the things that you've talked about is amazing. So for maybe like a last pearl of wisdom you'd like to offer for a leader who could just be struggling as a leader, who could be needing that one extra, that like a little extra oomph today to move them forward in their management and leadership role, what would you tell them? Maybe one pearl of wisdom.
Thank you very much for bringing up the term wisdom again, because it's the title of our nonprofit.
Yes.
So pearl of wisdom is really, and here I go, and it wasn't planned like that. Here I go with Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher from the 18th century. So he said, dare to be wise. I was reading, of course, a little bit about wisdom as we coined the term wisdom for this nonprofit. So the main driver is that why we are sometimes feeling enlightened and don't behave like that is it's not about the intellectual mind that we are missing. It's always about the courage. And he has written that in the 18th century already. So he said, dare to be wise. And I think that's the point. We have to be courageous. We have to be courageous to open up ourselves. And now we come back to heart and love. We have to be courageous enough to open up ourselves to our employees, that they can see us, that they can see our personality. We have to share or can share our personal stories with them, that we show we are not these kind of robots. We are human beings like them. And then we are authentic. Then we are taken serious. And then they follow us in a highly motivated way. That's my pearl of wisdom, as you called it.
Oh, I love that. See, this is a great way to go out. Thank you, Jennifer McKinley, for actually referring Dirk to us. I think this is going to be amazing for anybody who's listening. I am sure you took away tons of pearls here. I won't say wisdom, although wisdom is awesome. I love that you've named your organization that, and I'm going to actually dig a little deeper and learn more about it, because I think it sounds awesome. And I agree with your mission as well. So thank you for the work on that. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the one way they would contact you if they wanted to follow up with a question or something?
the best way to do that is LinkedIn, I would say. And you can easily find me there under my name, Dirk Frese, D-I-R-K, last name Frese, F-R-E-S-E.
Awesome. And what I'll do too for the listeners, don't forget, you'll go to the show notes and you'll be able to see some of the real highlights of the show and more information, a bio and headshot of Dirk as well. So you can follow up with him there. This has been amazing. I think that people have just taken away. I know I have. I'm going to be going back to listen to this again, not only when it's finally edited and done, but reading through these notes. And I'm going to be thinking about every one of my podcasts is titled one thing or another. And I love that idea of taking care of people and taking care of the entire whole person, and not just being business focused only, but making sure that you consider them as a whole. So I love that. And that'll probably somehow make its way into the title of this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Heather. It was a great pleasure. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.